Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. My internet is finally back, and I am up and running again, and I'm ecstatic about it because so much content in the week that I had no internet came out, and I'm just behind on so many things. And I got the internet back on Friday. Unfortunately, I was working all day. Got home at like 9 o'clock-ish, and I wanted to dive right into The Boys, but watching The Boys involves recording myself because my reviews will have reactions for them. Watched the first episode of The Boys yesterday when I had a little time. A very busy work schedule this weekend, which I was not expecting. But I dove into that. Whoa, that first episode. I can't wait to get into the rest and to put up the review, which will go up after this one later on today. But 9 o'clock on Friday, I was like, I'm a little tired. It's been a long day. I'm gonna throw on this Charlie Kaufman Netflix movie, and it's a movie that demands attention. You really got to pay attention to this one. It's a lot of words and a lot of conversation. All of that stuff is super important to everything that's going on in this movie. And I'm glad that I watched it. Albeit, this movie doesn't quite go where I thought it was gonna go, and one of the reasons I'm reviewing it Sunday after watching it Friday is I wanted to sit with this movie for a little bit because there is a lot to it and a lot of good things really going on. I know the Rotten Tomatoes score, the audience members are not high. I think it's like a 53% compared to the 89% from critics. I totally get that because this movie does operate kind of differently and throws you for a loop. But if you can hang on and take this ride all the way to the end and let it kind of sink in, I think Charlie Kaufman did something really, really good here. So why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which, as I said, comes to us from Charlie Kaufman, both writing and directing. But it is based on a book written by Ian Reid. And the basis of the movie, if you've seen the trailers, is Jesse Plemons' character, Jake, is taking his girlfriend of, a couple months, being played by Jesse Buckley, home to meet his parents for the first time. And the way Kaufman breaks this up is, it definitely has, the 3-act structure of a movie, but it's kind of broken up into like 4 30-minute segments. And I don't want that to sound like, oh man, like this is like 30-minute episodes. It flows like a normal movie, but like literally there are things that are happening or places where the movie is taking place for about 30 minutes in each situation. So, the thing that kind of is at the heart of this movie is its title, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And if you've seen the trailer, you know that Jesse Buckley's character, who's named Lucy, sometimes, we'll get there without spoiling it, but she, is kind of the perspective we're taking on from the trailer, and you hear her thinking, I'm thinking of ending things, and she says that repeatedly throughout the movie. And it's this kind of idea of like you're going to meet your boyfriend's parents during a time where you're thinking of breaking up with this guy, or you know that this relationship isn't going to continue forward. And that kind of plays into some interesting things that I really dug that Kaufman did as far as the way he broke the movie up. We start with this long car ride. It's also this couple's first long car ride as they're driving to Jake's parents' house. And I love that first 30 minutes because it just plays with all the things that are going on inside of a car when at least one of the two members has an issue or is thinking of ending things with the other one. So you get to see moments where you're like, oh, I understand why these two are dating, but you also get to see those really drastically awkward moments where you're like, this is so uncomfortable. And that's the thing that Kaufman does the best through the entire movie. You never feel comfortable during this movie, and it's not because he's throwing lots of like crazy things at you. This movie is a lot of talking. It's a lot of dialogue, and the writing is razor sharp. And all the things that Kaufman dives into, he tees up things and then knocks them on out the park. There are things where like you'll see something and then it gets referenced or brought into play later on in the movie, or is something that's kind of being talked about throughout where it's like mentioned here and we say something and then back here, or we see something and back here you hear a conversation or something get told or kind of revealed to us that goes back to something that we saw earlier. All the types of things that Charlie Kaufman is really, really good at doing, specifically getting into the psyche of his characters. And that's the thing that makes this movie pop. I loved the uncomfortable feeling of that car ride. I love the uncomfortable feeling and awkwardness that you get inside the house the first time that Jessie Buckley's character meets Jake's parents, and how that whole meeting goes, especially when the two parents are kind of off. One of the things I absolutely adore about Toni Collette in this movie is what they gave her to do. But I loved like all of these kind of awkward, like, I don't know, like, because they're situations that people have experienced before. They're things that you've felt, and Charlie nails all that stuff. And then I like the return ride at the end of the movie. The idea of, okay, we've gone through this whole thing, and there's some weird stuff going on inside the house during the visit, that you're back in the car, and again, you're seeing those awkward kind of uncomfortable moments with things that go, I wonder maybe this relationship could work. Now, if there's a problem with the movie, and I think it might be why the audience score is as low as it is. I think the audience score right now on Rotten Tomatoes is at 53, whereas the critic score is at an 85. Is that last 30 minutes takes a real hard turn in style, in tone, and in structure, and the way it's kind of telling things. One of the reasons I'm reviewing this on a Sunday when I watched it on a Friday, I kind of want to let this one sink in. And when you do let it sink in, you think about everything that Charlie is talking about, and the different subject matters and elements that he's getting into. When you get to the end of the movie, one, I don't really know Oklahoma at all. I know it's a big, musical. Lots of people do it. I love musicals, but I've never seen Oklahoma. And the last part of this movie deals heavily with elements of Oklahoma. When I heard that, I was like, oh, all right, that makes a little bit more sense. But it really, it's strange, and it's going to knock you off course. I think it's probably one of the reasons people don't like the movie so much, because it seems like it's building to one thing, and then you get something completely different. But when you can grasp what Kaufman is going for and what's actually going on screen, I think this movie is really, really smart and clever, and impactful, man. It definitely has a message that hits home when it does sink in. Now, outside of the writing, I think Kaufman is doing a lot of really interesting things, too, to keep you uncomfortable. You see things, and then you see things again, and you're like, wait, I thought I saw something like that before. Why is this? This is actually one of those movies where, like, you have to resist the urge to rewind, because you'll see something and go, ooh, that's not right. Like, that was something different over here. And it happens throughout the whole movie. And more than anywhere, inside the house is where a lot of it goes on, and specifically with Toni Collette and David Thewlis's characters, Jake's mom and dad. Like, you're watching, you're just like, what is happening? And it's interesting because Kaufman plays with the flow of time more so than anywhere inside the house. And understanding how and why he's playing with the flow of time really does play into the end of this movie and what it is that he's really trying to get at. So I think this movie's going to be hit or miss for people as far as the content goes. But there is one thing in this movie that I think, whether or not you can ride with the story or get to the end of the movie and go, oh yeah, I dug everything that I just saw. The one thing that you will dig, no matter what, are the performances, because there are 4 brilliant performances going on in this thing. As I mentioned, I adore Toni Collette, and anytime she's kind of asked to play one of these kind of oddball characters, she really, really pops and crushes it here. Jake's mom is a very interesting character, and it fits Toni Collette so well. I mean, this whole role is just in her wheelhouse. I could watch her do this all day long. Same goes for David Thewlis, who also just kind of crushes being like off. Like there's something off with the parents the whole movie, and like the way that he'll hold a stare or hold his eye contact at times. I'm just like, all those little things are the things that kind of all add to the tension and the uneasiness you feel most of this movie. And outside of those two, I mean, this movie is literally all about Jesse Plemons and Jessie Buckley. They are absolutely amazing. Like, top-notch standout performances from both. Jesse Plemons is a guy I've been watching on TV and in the movies for years. And every time he pops up anywhere, I go, man, I really, really dig this guy. Sometimes he reminds me a lot of Matt Damon. It's like there are times where I'll see him or I'll hear him. I'm like, I swear you could be related to Matt Damon. But overall, I just always love what Plemons does. And what he does here, playing this character of Jake, it's interesting, man. Kaufman gives him a lot to chew on. And the way he can kind of take the character in different places and make you feel like, oh, I don't even understand why Jessie Buckley's character ever got involved with this guy, to then have moments where you're like, oh, I totally get why she got together with this guy, but I totally get why she's thinking of pulling the plug. Like, he just crushes that stuff. And both characters are highly intelligent. There's some real highbrow conversation going on, but the way that he can kind of swing from that highbrow conversation that you might not understand into things that you do, or can crack a joke or shit, like, he just nails that stuff. And Jessie Buckley, like, talk about a standout performance, man. Like, she carries a lot of this movie along with Plemons, and she's just so good, man. Like, everything they ask her to do and the way that she plays this character of Lucy is really, really interesting. And it plays so well into this world and story that Charlie Kaufman's built out, and they both are able to play into that kind of weird uneasiness where, like, there are just moments where nothing's really going on. Like, you have just a static camera and two people talking. And they just crush that stuff. And when you add in all those elements that I mentioned that kind of just make you go, wait, what's going on with this? Or what's going on with this? I think you get a really kind of solid, uneasy movie for 3/4 of the film. That last quarter of the film is beautiful. There's some wonderful stuff that goes on in that, and from storytelling to what you're watching, it is wonderful. It's just so drastically different from the rest of the movie that if you can't let that sink in and really understand what it is Kaufman's going for, it's not going to land. And I think that's probably the problem that some people, or most people, at least in the audience side, I'm not shocked that the score is in like the low 50s, because the last part of this movie is a coin toss. Like, you were either going to get people that go, wow, that's awesome, or you'll get people that like me, who are like, I really dug this. I don't understand all of it, but I'm going to let it sit with me and think about it. And I appreciate a movie that just makes you think about what it's talking about and the context. And Kaufman has a lot to say about life, relationships, duality of meanings of things. I mean, the idea of I'm thinking of ending things has multiple meanings to it. You have the straightforward, like, the girlfriend is thinking of ending things with the boyfriend. But when I told my mom that I was watching a movie called I'm thinking of ending things, she was like, is this a suicide movie? And I'm like, no, it's not. But yeah, that term, that sentence can have those multiple meanings. And Kaufman dives into those things. He touches on all of that stuff. And I really appreciate all of that. It's just, I think this movie, it's going to be hit or miss based on the very, very end. And I promise you, if you sit, you think about it, maybe it doesn't hit you, go out and read, understand what it is that's really happening at the end of the movie and what Kaufman is actually going for. I mean, this is a movie that looks like one thing, but I promise you is a completely different thing than what you're watching. And the movie, like I said, with the duality of words and meanings, plays with that concept inside of itself. Like, stuff like that, I just dig. So I really enjoyed I'm Thinking of Ending Things, although it took me, it's a movie you have to let sink in. But on its surface, I really enjoy the uncomfortable things and elements that Kaufman plays with that make you feel uneasy throughout the whole movie. I really appreciate what he's trying to get at story-wise and the things that he's talking about. And and the movie itself is technically just very, very well made. I mean, it's a very beautiful movie to watch. The cinematography in it is great. The way it opens kind of tees up some things where you're like, all right, I'm seeing the insides of rooms. I can't wait to see what these rooms actually are. And then you get to see them within inside the context of Jake's parents' house, which is, again, the set pieces too are just wonderful. So you have all those great things going for it. And I think it's one of those where, like, the performances are going to knock you out. You should really enjoy the performances. And then I hope that the movie can land, or that you can land close enough to what Kaufman's going for that you get to understanding, like, oh, this is what's really going on here. And when you see what the story is really about, I think Kaufman knocks this one out of the park. So there you go, man. Those are all my non-spoiler thoughts on I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Really dug this movie. Takes a minute, but there's lots of good stuff in here, and it's totally worth the watch. Now, I want to know what you're thinking, man. Are you a fan of Charlie Kaufman? When you saw this, pop up as a trailer, we were like, ooh, that's one I'm going to watch. And if you watched it, where'd you land? Like I said, I feel like this is a 50-50 coin flip based on whether or not the end hits home or not. So let me know where you landed on that coin flip, and regardless of where you landed overall, what things did you like or dislike about the movie? And if you haven't seen I'm Thinking of Ending Things, don't know anything about it, have I enticed you to want to check it out? Again, I think if you're in the category of kind of like that highbrow horror, things like Hereditary or Midsommar, I think this is a movie that can work and can speak to you. It doesn't function exactly like those do. I think those are closer to horror than this one. But there is a real deep human horror to this movie that I think is really, really dope. So there you go, man. Those are all my thoughts. Can't wait to see your thoughts down below in the comments section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old C-Man and join the C-Maniacs, you can do that by jumping over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, when we get ready to talk episode 1 of season 2 of The Boys, for the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, I'm the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. C-Man's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the C-Man goodies, join the Cinema Sit Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.